others suffered quietly, Sherwa's fame only grew louder. Her salon became the busiest place on the street. People now traveled from nearby town to sit in her chair. She rarely advertised, but word of mouth brought endless customers. In the heart of Ayetoro Street stood a salon unlike any other. The building itself was not the grandest, yet it drew people from every corner of the town. Its walls were painted bright pink, and the name, Sherwa's Touch, was written in bold white letters above the glass door. On most days, the sound of laughter, chatter, and clattering combs filled the air. The place had a life of its own, as though it breathed through the many women who came and left with freshly braided hair. The owner, Madam Sherwa, was a woman in her mid-30s. She carried herself with grace and confidence, always dressed in neat blouses and long skirts or trousers. Her head tied with stylish scarves. Her eyes were sharp, her voice gentle but commanding, and her hands moved faster than anyone had ever seen. Customers often said her fingers worked like magic, twisting and locking braids as if she had been born to do it. No matter how long a woman's hair was, Madam Sherwa finished before anyone expected. While other salons kept customers waiting from morning till night, Sherwa completed hers in record time, leaving each client stunned. Not only were the braids fast, but they were also neat and beautiful. The lines were always straight, the extensions well blended, and the finishing perfect. Because of this, the salon never lacked customers. From sunrise, women lined up outside, some with children strapped to their backs, some carrying bags filled with their attachments, oils, and scarves. Even working class women who barely had time for self-care found themselves drawn to the salon. It seemed everyone trusted Sherwa with their hair. Inside, the salon had 6 mirrors, 3 on each side, with cushioned chairs facing them. Shelves filled with hair products, sprays, relaxers, oils, gels lined the walls. Posters of models with elaborate hairstyles covered the spaces between mirrors, and the air smelled of coconut oil and freshly washed hair. The atmosphere buzzed with energy. Sherwa employed 2 assistants, but truth be told, they often found themselves idle. While they attended to smaller tasks, washing, applying treatment, or arranging items, it was always Madam Sherwa who took the main seat behind clients. She preferred it that way. Her speed and precision could not be matched, and customers insisted she touched their heads personally. Every day, the same pattern repeated. Women walked in with plain look and tired faces but left smiling, twirling before the mirrors, running their fingers across the fresh braids. They praised Sherwa endlessly. "Madam, you are too good," one said as she admired her reflection. "See how fine I look now. And you finished so quickly. God bless your hands." Another chimed in. "I've been to too many salons, but none compares to this one. You are truly gifted." Sherwa only smiled, her lips curving slowly, her eyes glinting in a way no one ever noticed. She often replied in a calm tone, "It is the work of my hands. I thank God for it." But deep inside, she knew her gift was not ordinary. While others suffered quietly, Sherwa's fame only grew louder. Her salon became the busiest place on the street. People now traveled from nearby town to sit in her chair. She rarely advertised, but word of mouth brought endless customers. "Have you not heard of Sherwa?" Women would whisper to one another. "She works faster than anyone else. You will not regret it." Cars lined the front of the shop daily. Mothers brought daughters, wives came with friends. Even elderly women with tiny hair insisted on sitting before Sherwa. Her business prospered beyond expectation. She expanded the shop, bought new chairs, installed air conditioning, and even painted the walls again to give it a brighter glow. At night, when she locked the doors and turned off the lights, she would stand for a moment, staring at the mirrors. A small smile would cross her face, as if she saw something others could not. Her two assistants often wondered how she managed to work with such speed. They had watched her hands countless times but could not understand why they struggled with simple braids. Sherwa completed complicated styles without breaking a sweat. Madam, you must teach us your secret, one assistant said jokingly one evening. Sherwa only laughed softly and replied, it is not something anyone can teach. My hand simply obeys me. They thought it was humility, but her words carried a hidden truth. After everyone left, Ayetoro Street would grow quiet. Shops closed, the market emptied, and only the distant sound of crickets and the occasional passing car remained. Inside Sherwa's touch, darkness wrapped the room except for a single bulb left on above the central mirror. Sherwa often stayed behind after dismissing her assistants, claiming she needed to clean or arrange things. In truth, she enjoyed being alone with the silence of her shop. One particular night, after a long day of braiding, she sat before the main mirror. Her tools lay scattered, combs, clips, oils, and scattered extensions. The chairs were empty, yet she felt the room was not entirely hers. She leaned back, tired but strangely alert. Then it began. A faint sound, almost like breathing, came from the bundle of braids she had just completed earlier in the evening. She turned her head sharply, but no one was there. She rubbed her temples and laughed quietly. Perhaps I'm imagining things, she muttered. But the sound returned, louder this time. It was no longer breathing, it was whispering. The braided hair on the manicure head shifted slightly, as though stirred by an invisible wind. From within, a voice crept into the room, soft but chilling, speaking words only Sherwa could hear. Her lips curved again into that familiar smile. She leaned closer, listening, her eyes gleaming in the half-light. The whispers filled the salon, wrapping around her like shadows. And so the night deepened, carrying secrets no one else in Ayetoro could imagine. Long before Madam Sherwa became the woman everyone admired, she was just a struggling young lady in the heart of Lagos. Life was cruel to her. She was the first daughter of 4 children, yet her parents had little to give. Her father was a carpenter whose workshop rarely had work, and her mother sold pepper at the market. Their income was never enough. Sherwa dropped out of school at 17 because there was no money for her fees. She was bright and ambitious, but poverty chained her dreams. With no certificate and no connection, she wandered from house to house seeking work. Some families allowed her to wash clothes for a few naira. Others asked her to sweep and cook, but nothing stable came her way. She hated the constant begging, the endless "we will call you back" that never led to anything. Finally, she saved enough from her menial jobs to rent a small wooden kiosk on the roadside. It was barely wide enough to hold a chair and a mirror, but she painted the walls white and boldly wrote, "Hair by Sherwa" above the door. That kiosk was her pride. Every morning, she sat on a wooden stool outside, waiting for women to stop by. But few did. Her braiding was average, her hands slow, and her finishing not different from other roadside stylists. Bigger salons nearby attracted most of the customers. Some days, she sat from dawn to dusk without touching a single head. When she managed to braid, the pay was so small that it could not cover food and rent. Hunger became her constant companion. At night, when the street grew quiet, Sherwa often laid on her tin mat, tears rolling down her cheeks. She whispered prayers, begging God to bless her hands. to open a way for her. But the days dragged on with the same struggles. The kiosk grew dusty, and she often thought of closing it down. One evening, after a particularly hopeless day with no customers, she sat inside the kiosk with her head bowed. The street was empty, save for a few traders packing their goods. The sun had long set, and the orange glow of lanterns lit the dusty road. As she stared blankly into the small mirror in front of her, she felt a sudden chill. The air grew heavy, though no breeze passed. Then she noticed an old woman standing by the doorway. The woman looked fragile, her back bent, her skin wrinkled like dried leather. She wore a faded wrapper and tied a scarf loosely on her head. Her eyes, however, burned with strange brightness that pierced Sherwa's chest. "My daughter," the woman's voice was deep, though her frame looked weak. "Why are you crying?" Sherwa wiped her tears quickly. "Mama, it is nothing. Life has been hard. Customers pass my kiosk as if I don't exist. I cannot continue like this." The old woman stepped inside without being invited. She glanced around at the poor state of the kiosk, the empty shelves, the cracked mirror. Then she smiled, exposing yellowed teeth. "You want success?" she asked quietly. Sherwa nodded, though fear pricked her. Something about the woman did not feel normal, yet she was desperate, too desperate to question. "I can help you," the woman said, her eyes never blinking. "But success is never free. Are you willing to do what others fear?" Sherwa swallowed hard. Her voice trembled. "What must I do?" The old woman leaned closer until Sherwa could smell her strange breath, like burnt palm oil mixed with ash. She whispered, "Your hands will braid faster than 10 women. Your work will be flawless. People will travel far and near to sit on your chair. They will call your name with respect. But every head you touch will leave behind more than the hair. Their glory will feed you, and your shop will never run dry." Sherwa froze. "Glory?" "Yes." The woman's voice deepened. "Their blessings, their fortunes, their star. You will take it, and they will not know. Their hair will open to you, and mouths will speak secrets only you can hear. These mouths will guide you, make your hand swift, and fill your life with wealth. In return, you must never stop braiding. The day you refuse, the covenant will consume you." Sheba's heart pounded. Fear and temptation welled in her. She had begged God for help, but nothing came. Now here was a path, strange and dangerous, but a path nonetheless. She thought of her parents still struggling, her siblings depending on her, her empty stomach growing every night. She whispered, "Yes, I will do it." The old woman grinned. She reached into her wrapper and pulled out a small black comb. Its teeth glistened like polished bone. She placed it into Sherwa's hand. "Use this comb for every customer. The first stroke will open the mouth of the hair. Only you will hear its voice. Obey, and you will rise. Disobey, and you will fall." Sherwa clutched the comb, trembling. The woman touched her forehead with a bony finger. A sudden heat surged through her veins. She gasped, feeling her hands grow light, almost electric. When she opened her eyes, the woman was gone. The next morning, a young lady stopped at her kiosk. She wanted simple braids. Sherwa, still shaking from the night, picked up the black comb. The moment it touched the woman's hair, something extraordinary happened. A soft crackling sound echoed. Then, right before her eyes, the parted lines of hair stretched and formed a mouth. The lips were small, made of strands, yet they moved. Sherwa nearly dropped the comb, but the mouth spoke. Twist left, twist right, pull faster, follow me. Her hands obeyed automatically, moving with incredible speed. In less than half the usual time, the braids were complete. They were neat, perfect, flawless. The woman looked into the mirror and gasped, "Ha! This is beautiful. And you finished so quickly. How much?" Sherwa muted the price, her voice shaky. The woman paid and left, singing praises. Sherwa sat frozen. She stared at her hands, then at the black comb lying on the table. She had crossed a line she could never return from. Day after day, more women came. Each time she touched the comb to their hair, a mouth appeared, whispering directions. Sometimes the mouth told secrets about the customers, hidden fears, private struggles. Sometimes they only guided her hand. Each time, she finished faster and better than before. Soon, people flooded her kiosk. She no longer worried about rent or food. She bought better chairs, added mirrors, stocked shelves with products. As the mouth whispered, she felt a strange satisfaction. Each client left looking beautiful, but she could sense something invisible living with her. Their shoulders bent slightly lower, their eyes dimmed, their fortunes weakened, yet no one noticed. Months passed, and Sherwa transformed. She no longer looked like a struggling roadside stylist. She dressed in fine clothes, wore gold earrings, and carried herself with pride. Her kiosk became too small, so she rented a bigger shop. She named it Sherwa's Touch. The salon shone with bright paint, mirrors, and cushioned chairs. Customers filled it daily, and her name spread far beyond Ayetoro Street. People spoke of her as though she was blessed, as though God Himself touched her hands. But only she knew the truth. At night, when the saloon was quiet, she heard the whispers of every braid she had touched that day. Voices calling, laughing, crying, all mixed together. Instead of fear, she felt comfort. They reminded her of the covenant she had chosen. She had given herself fully to it, and it had rewarded her with power, wealth, and reputation that no one could rival. Madame Sherwa, the stylist everyone loved, was born. The name Sherwa's Touch had now become a song on the lips of women across the city. Everyone wanted to look good, and everyone trusted Madame Sherwa to deliver. From early morning until the sun disappeared, her chairs were always full. People traveled from far neighborhoods, sometimes queuing for hours just to sit under her hands. Her assistants worked harder than ever, but customers still asked for Sherwa personally. "It is her hands I want," they often said. "Nobody else can braid the way she does." Sherwa always smiled politely, hiding the glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. The mouth in the hair had made her unstoppable, and her covenant never failed her. But while she grew brighter, many who passed through her salon began to experience strange shadows. There is this lady called Aisha, a young woman filled with excitement as her wedding day drew close. She had been saving for months to ensure she looked her best. Her friends told her, "You must go to Sherwa's Touch. Oh. No one will make you shine more than Madame Sherwa." So, 2 weeks before her big day, Aisha walked into the salon, carrying attachments, beads, and oils. She laughed with her friends as she sat, telling them how her fiancé adored her. Madame Sherwa welcomed her warmly, her hand swift as always. The mouth opened in Aisha's hair, whispering, guiding, pulling Sherwa's finger. Within hours, the style was complete. Aisha looked into the mirror and gasped. She looked like a queen. Her friends clapped and admired her beauty. She left the salon glowing, thanking Sherwa endlessly. But only a week later, disaster struck. Her fiancé, a gentleman named Musa, suddenly called off the wedding. He gave no explanation. He simply said, "I cannot continue." Aisha cried, begged, and pleaded, but his heart had changed overnight. Rumors spread that another woman had taken his attention, but no one could prove it. The shame was heavy. Guests had already bought clothes, invitations were distributed, and halls were booked. Aisha became the talk of the town, not as a bride, but as a woman abandoned at the last minute. She remembered how beautiful she looked after leaving Sherwa's touch, but she never thought the saloon had anything to do with her heartbreak. Another victim was Janet, a hardworking woman employed at a commercial bank. She had always been careful, professional, and dedicated to her job. Promotion was close, and her managers trusted her. She visited Sherwa's touch on a Saturday, smiling as she entered. She told the stylist how she wanted to look smart and confident for an upcoming presentation at work. Sherwa nodded, her fingers moving quickly. The mouth whispered, and her hand followed with precision. In record time, the braids were completed. Janet admired herself in the mirror. I look like success already, she said with cheerfulness. She paid and left with joy. On Monday, she walked into the bank, her hair shining, her confidence high. But by Wednesday, her world crumbled. An audit revealed irregularities in accounts she had never touched. Her name appeared on documents she had not signed. When she protested, the managers did not believe her. They accused her of dishonesty. Within days, she was dismissed. Her colleagues avoided her, whispering that greed had ruined her. Janet cried bitterly. She had worked for years without a stain, yet suddenly everything was gone. Ngozi, a bright student from a humble family, had been given a scholarship to study abroad. It was her family's greatest pride, the chance to break free from poverty. She decided to visit Sherwa's touch a day before her flight. She wanted to look decent and respectable as she met her sponsors. She entered the salon with laughter and dreams shining in her eyes. Sherwa's comb touched her hair, and the whispering mouth appeared. As always, the braid came out perfect. Ngozi smiled, saying, Madam, I will not forget you. When I reach London, I will tell everyone about Sherwa's touch. But she never left Nigeria. The following morning, she reached the airport only to be told her documents had issues. Her visa, which had been approved, was suddenly cancelled. Investigations showed her sponsors had withdrawn their support, claiming she was no longer eligible. No explanation was clear. Ngozi broke down in the airport, her suitcase beside her, her dreams shattered. She went home empty-handed, her family devastated. While these lives crumbled, Madam Sherwa's own life blossomed like a flower in the sun. Money poured in daily. Women fought for appointments. Even men praised her name, thanking her for making their wives and daughters beautiful. With her wealth, she bought her first car, a small Toyota. Soon after, she upgraded to a sleek black Jeep that turned heads wherever she passed. She built a larger branch of her salon in another part of the city, decorating it with bright lights and imported furniture. Her assistants looked at her with awe. They whispered among themselves, Madame is truly blessed. God has favored her. But it was not God who gave her hands their power. A more misfortunes spread. People began to notice a strange pattern. A mother said to her friend, Do you know that Aisha lost her groom after making her hair at Sherwa's touch? The friend replied, Ah, that is true. And have you heard about Janet, the banker? She too was Sherwa's customer. Another added, Even Ngozi the student, the girl with the scholarship, she was at the salon the day before everything failed. At first, people dismissed these talks as coincidence, but as the stories multiplied, the whispers grew stronger. Why is it that those who visit the salon always face problems later? Some asked quietly. Still, no one dared to accuse Madam Sherwa openly. Her salon was too popular, her work too admired, her wealth too obvious. Women loved beauty, and beauty blinded them to the rumors. Many said, These are ordinary misfortunes. How can braids ruin someone's life? And so, While shadows of loss followed her customers, Sherwa's empire continued to grow. Her shops expanded, her cars multiplied, her name spread wider. At night, when she sat alone, the whispers from the braided hair reminded her of the covenant she had accepted. She would listen, her eyes shining in the dim light, while far away, her former customers cried over lives that would never be the same. The sun rose brightly over Ayetoro Street, painting the sky with streaks of gold. It was another busy morning at Sherwa's torch. Cars lined the roadside, women filled the waiting area, and laughter floated through the air as assistants hurried from one end of the salon to another. Madam Sherwa, dressed in a deep green wrapper and a silky blouse, walked around with calm confidence. Her earring glittered under the fluorescent light, and her scarf sat neatly on her head. Every eye in the room followed her movement with admiration. To many, she was not just a stylist, she was a miracle worker. The chairs were full, the mirrors reflected smiling faces, and the sound of combs clicking the air. Yet in the middle of the chatter, a quiet young woman stepped through the door. Her name was Amara. She was 26 years old, tall and graceful, with soft brown skin and bright eyes that seemed to hold more wisdom than her age. She wore a simple dress, carried a small handbag, and walked with calm steps. Unlike most customers, she did not come with a group of friends or with endless chatter. She simply entered, greeted politely, and sat quietly on the bench. The assistant noticed her silence. One whispered to another, "That lady looks different. She doesn't talk too much." Madam Sherwa, busy with a client, glanced at her briefly. There was something unusual about Amara's aura. She sat as though she carried her own light. After some time, one of the chairs became free, and Amara was called forward. She smiled forwardly, thanked the assistant, and sat before the large mirror. "What style do you want, madam?" Sherwa asked, standing behind her. "Simple braids," Amara replied gently. "Something I can keep for church and work." Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with quiet strength. Sherwa picked up her comb, the same comb given to her years ago during the covenant. The moment it touched Amara's hair, the familiar sound echoed in silence of her mind. The parted strand shifted slightly, and the mouth appeared, small but clear, formed from the weaving hair. Sherwa leaned closer, ready to hear the usual instructions, but something unexpected happened. The mouth did not speak to Sherwa alone. It whispered, and Amara heard it too. At first, Amara stiffened. She thought she imagined it, but the voice grew louder, flowing directly into her ears. "Beware, beware, the hands on your head steal more than beauty. She feeds on glory, she drains destinies, she leaves emptiness behind." Amara's heart thudded in her chest. Her lips trembled, but she forced herself to remain calm. She glanced at Sherwa through the mirror. The stylist's eyes glowed faintly as she walked, fully absorbed in the braiding. Amara realized Sherwa could not see her reaction. Perhaps Sherwa believed she alone could hear the whispers. The voice continued. "She has taken from brides, from workers, from students. Many now walk in shame and sorrow. Do not trust her touch. Do not leave your spirit unguarded." A wave of cold fear washed over Amara. She wanted to leap from the chair and run, but she forced a smile and sat still. She bowed her head slightly, whispering prayers under her breath. Inside, she thought, "Lord, what is this place? Why am I hearing this?" For the rest of the session, Amara acted normal. She nodded when Sherwa asked if she was comfortable, smiled when others admired her patience, and even laughed politely at a joke. But inside, her spirit trembled. Every time the comb touched her scalp, the mouth whispered warnings. Sometimes it spoke names: Aisha, Janet, Ngozi, the very women whose lives had been shattered. Sometimes it cried softly, the sound of trapped sorrow. Amara prayed silently, covering herself with words of protection she had known since childhood. Still, she felt the darkness of the salon pressing closer. When the braids were finally done, she looked into the mirror. She appeared beautiful, flawless as always under Sherwa's hands. Everyone in the salon admired her reflection. "You look wonderful," one woman said. Amara smiled faintly and paid her money. She thanked Sherwa, picked up her bag, and walked out calmly, but her heart was pounding. That night, after a long day, Amara returned to her small apartment. She lived alone in a simple one-room apartment with a bed, a table, and a Bible that never left her side. She knelt down and prayed for strength, asking God to reveal what she had experienced. Her prayer was deep and cheerful. She felt a heavy burden in her spirit, as though the cries of others rested upon her shoulders. Eventually, she laid on her bed and drifted into sleep. That night, she had a dream. She stood inside a vast, dark salon. Rows of mirrors stretched endlessly, reflecting shadows instead of faces. Dozens of chairs lined the floor, and in each chair sat a woman with her head bent low. Their braids shimmered faintly, but instead of looking neat, each braid ended with a tiny mouth that moved silently. The silence broke suddenly. One by one, the mouth opened and began to cry. The sound grew louder, echoing through the endless hall. The women raised their heads, tears streaming down their cheeks. "We are trapped," they wailed together. "Our glory is gone. Our destiny is stolen. She used us, and no one knows." Amara covered her ears, but the cries pierced her heart. She saw Aisha dressed in a torn wedding gown, Janet clutching a dismissal letter, Ngozi holding a shredded passport. Behind them were countless others, nameless women, all sobbing, their braids heavy with sorrow. The voices rose higher, surrounding Amara like a storm. The floor shook, the mirrors cracked, and the air grew thick with grief. Amara fell to her knees, crying out loud, "Oh Lord, what must I do?" But no answer came, only the endless chorus of women weeping, their voices locked in braids that refused to let them go. The dream swallowed her completely, drowning her in sorrow she could not escape. And that was how Amara's first night after visiting Sherwa's touch ended, haunted by voices of women whose lives had been stolen by the stylist Covenant. Morning light crept through Amara's window, waking her from restless sleep. Her eyes opened slowly, but the heavy images of her dream still pressed on her heart. She sat up, breathing deeply, recalling the countless women who had cried in the shadows of her sleep. Their voices still echoed in her ears. "Our glory is gone. Our destiny is stolen." Amara placed her palm on her chest, whispering a soft prayer. "Lord, I need your guidance. Show me if what I saw is true, or if it was only fear." She spent most of the day in quiet thought. She went about her duties, washing, cooking, and tidying her small room, but her mind remained on the salon. By evening, her decision was clear. She had to return. Something inside her told her that what she heard and saw was not ordinary imagination. She needed confirmation. The next afternoon, Amara tied her scarf and walked calmly to Sherwa's touch. The salon buzzed with its usual life. Women filled the chairs, some laughing, some arguing over styles, others admiring themselves in the mirror. Sherwa herself stood in the middle of it all, her hands moving swiftly over a client's head. She looked regal in her flowing blouse, her wrists jingling with bangles as she walked. Her eyes flickered to Amara briefly, and for a second, her smile seemed to falter, but she quickly masked it. Amara waited patiently, clutching her small handbag. Her heart pounded, but her face betrayed nothing. When one chair became free, she sat again. "You have returned?" Sherwa asked warmly. "Did you like the last style I gave you?" "Yes," Amara replied quietly, "but I want something new today." The comb touched her hair as before. The strands shifted, forming lips. Amara braced herself. The voice emerged, not soft this time, but heavy, urgent. She has drained many, the mouth said. Brides, workers, students, mothers, children. Their stars are gone, swallowed by her greed. Their tears follow her, but no one knows the truth. Amara's eyes widened. She clutched the arms of the chair, trembling. The whispers grew faster, naming names: Aisha, Janet, and many more. Each name stabbed Amara's heart like a blade. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The room spun around her. She tried to pray, but her tongue felt heavy. Darkness closed in on her vision. She fainted. Gasps filled the salon. Assistants rushed to Amara's side. One sprinkled water on her face, another fanned her gently. Customers murmured in concern, but Sherwa stood over her, her eyes sharp, her jaw clenched. For a brief moment, she considered ending it all, silencing Amara before she spoke a word of what she had heard. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes darted to the black comb. She knew Amara was different. She could not allow her to expose the covenant. But she held herself. She could not act in front of everyone. She will be fine, Sherwa said smoothly, forcing a smile. Maybe the weather is too hot. Give her space. The assistants obeyed, though their eyes lingered with worry. Minutes later, Amara stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gasped for breath. The assistant helped her sit upright. Are you okay, madam? One asked kindly. Yes, yes, Amara whispered, her voice shaky. She pressed her palms together, bowing her head slightly. Quietly, she prayed, Father, cover me with your strength. Do not let fear swallow me. As she prayed, peace washed over her. It was as though an invisible hand rested on her shoulder. Her trembling ceased, her breath steadied, and she rose slowly from the chair. I'm fine, she said firmly. She gave a faint smile, thanked the assistant, and reached for her bag. Sherwa watched her carefully, her eyes narrowing. For the first time, she sensed something she had never felt before, a resistance she could not bend. Amara left the salon without saying another word. She walked down the busy street, her legs weak but her spirit awake. She knew without doubt now, the dream had been real and the whispers were true. Back in her room, she lit a candle and opened her Bible. She prayed again, but this time her words carried strength. She remembered the faces in her dream, the countless women trapped in sorrow. They must be free, she whispered. This cannot continue. Her fear did not vanish completely, but courage began to rise within her heart. She realized she could not stay silent. If she did, more lives would be ruined, more destinies stolen. Amara knew it would not be easy. Madame Sherwa was powerful, wealthy, and admired by the whole community. Speaking against her would sound like envy or madness. Yet Amara felt a strong presence guiding her, urging her to take a stand. That night, as the city lights flickered in the distance, Amara sat by her window, staring at the dark sky. Her fists tightened, her eyes glistened with determination. She whispered softly, I will not be afraid. I will confront her, and I will warn the others. She cannot hide forever. The morning was quiet, but Amara's heart was not. She had spent the whole night praying, wrestling with her fear, and gathering courage. By dawn, her mind was clear. She would return to the salon, but this time not as an ordinary customer. She would go as someone ready to face the darkness hidden inside Sherwa's touch. She dressed in a long blue gown and tied her scarf firmly. She carried her Bible in her bag, her fingers brushing its leather cover for comfort. Before stepping out, she whispered, Lord, give me strength. I cannot do this alone. Her feet carried her firmly towards Ayetoro Street. Every step felt heavy, but her spirit burned with determination. The salon looked as bright as ever. Women sat chatting, laughing, gossiping, while assistants rushed about with bowls of water and bottles of oil. The mirror shone under the fluorescent light. From outside, nothing looked unusual, but Amara's eyes saw more. She felt the thick presence of something unseen. Her spirit stirred as though warning her. This place was not ordinary. She pushed the door open and entered. The chatter died silently as some women turned to look at her. Madam Sherwa was standing near the central chair, her hands busy with a client's braids. She raised her head slowly and their eyes met. For a brief second, Sherwa's smile faltered, but she quickly marked it with her usual calm charm. Are you here again? Sherwa said smoothly. Welcome back. Do you want another style today? Amara walked forward, her face steady, her voice firm. No, madam. I came with a question. The saloon grew quieter. A few customers exchanged glances. Assistants paused in their works. What question? Sherwa asked, still pretending to smile. Amara's voice carried through the room. Why does the hair talk when you braid it? The entire saloon froze. The air grew heavy. Every eye turned to Amara. Some women frowned in confusion. Others whispered, What is she saying? Sherwa's hand stopped. Her comb slipped slightly. She turned slowly to face Amara fully. Her smile had vanished. Her eyes burned with sudden rage. What did you just say? She asked, her voice sharp. You heard me, Amara replied. Her tone was unshaken. The hair speaks. I heard it with my own ears. It told me what you have been doing to your customers. It revealed the destinies you have stolen. Gasp filled the salon. Women clutched their bags. Some stood, some sat frozen. Sherwa's lips coiled into a snarl. The mask of gentleness she wore every day cracked, revealing the darkness beneath. You dare question me in my own territory, she hissed. Her voice was no longer smooth. It was harsh, vibrating with anger. She stepped closer to Amara, her bangles clicking with each movement. You think you can walk in here and accuse me, foolish girl? Her eyes glowed faintly, and her hands trembled as though power surged through them. Amara stood her ground, though her knees shook inside. I am not afraid of you, she said quietly. You have destroyed many lives, but your secret will not last forever. Sherwa's anger boiled over. She raised her hand and began chanting under her breath. Words strange and sharp. The air grew colder. Suddenly, the light flickered. The mirrors on the walls trembled, their reflections twisting unnaturally. One by one, cracks spread across the glass, spider webbing until pieces fell with sharp sounds. Women screamed, rushing towards the door, but the door slammed shut by itself. Panic filled the room. The braids hanging on the mannequin heads began to writhe. Their strands twisted, and from their mouths appeared, crying and mourning. The voices grew louder, overlapping in sorrow and rage. Free us! Free us! They wailed. The assistants dropped everything and ran to a corner, covering their faces in terror. Customers clung to one another, weeping. Amara's heart raced, but she whispered prayers under her breath, clutching her bag tightly. God is with me, she murmured. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Sherwa's voice rose higher, her words echoing strangely as though more than one person spoke through her. She stretched her hand toward Amara, her fingers coiled like claws. You will not leave this place alive, she spat. Your tongue will wither, your bones will burn, and your spirit will be swallowed by mine. The cries from the braids grew deafening, the air thick with shadows. The ground shook slightly. Bottles fell from the shelves. Chairs toppled. But Amara did not move. She closed her eyes, lifted her head, and prayed with all her strength. Lord, I stand under your light. No darkness can swallow me. Let your presence cover me. A sudden calmness enveloped her. She felt as though a shield had risen around her body. Sherwa's hand stopped mid-air, unable to touch her. Sherwa screamed in fury. her face twisted, sweat rolling down her cheeks. The door of the salon burst open suddenly, as if pushed by an unseen force. Fresh air rushed in, and women ran out screaming, scattering in the street. Amara stepped back slowly, her eyes never leaving Sherwa's. "Your secret is exposed," she said firmly. "I will not be silent. The truth will come out." With those words, she turned and ran through the open door. The crowd outside watched in confusion as terrified customers poured into the street. Some shouted, "What happened?" Others whispered, "Is something wrong inside?" Inside the saloon, Sherwa roared like a wild beast, her voice echoing through the walls. The cracked mirrors reflected her twisted face, the mannequin heads still crying softly. But Amara was already gone, her feet carrying her quickly down the street. Her chest heaved, but her spirit was steady. She knew what she had to do next. She whispered as she ran, "I will expose her. The community must know the truth." The night after her escape, Amara could hardly sleep. Her body trembled each time she remembered Madam Sherwa's eyes blazing with fury, her words like poisoned arrows. Yet her spirit remained firm. She had seen too much to keep quiet. She knew the saloon was a prison for countless souls, and she could not stand by while others continued to fall in the same trap. She rose before dawn, prayed fervently, and decided her next step. She would gather the women who had suffered after visiting Sherwa's touch. She would bring them together to share their pain, and with one voice, they would confront the stylist. It was not easy to find them. Many of the victims had fallen into shame and kept silent. Some had left the area entirely, but Amara was determined. She walked from house to house, asking careful questions, whispering names she had heard in her dream and through the hair whispers. She found Aisha, the bride who had lost her groom, living quietly with her parents. At first, Aisha refused to talk, but when Amara mentioned the salon, tears welled in her eyes. She admitted she had visited Sherwa shortly before her wedding collapsed. Next, Amara traced Janet, the banker who had been dismissed. Janet looked weary, her face lined with sorrow. She too had gone to Sherwa's touch days before her downfall. When Amara told her what she knew, Janet broke down in tears. Finally, Amara visited Ngozi, the scholarship student. Ngozi sat in her family's small parlor, still clutching the document that had once promised her a future abroad. She cried bitterly when Amara described the dream of trapped women. She agreed immediately to join the fight. Word spread quietly, and more victims came forward. Mothers, sisters, wives, and daughters all shared the same strange connection. Their troubles had begun after Madam Sherwa touched their hair. One evening, Amara brought them together in a large sitting room belonging to a local church elder who believed in her testimony. The women sat in a circle, some clutching Bibles, others wiping their eyes. Amara spoke gently but firmly. "You are not alone. What happened to you was not ordinary. Madam Sherwa is not what she appears to be. She has been feeding on destinies, using her as her doorway. We must confront her, not in fear, but in prayer." The women murmured in agreement. Aisha whispered, I thought I was cursed. I never knew others suffered too." Janet added, "I lost everything. But if my voice can help end this evil, I will stand with it." Ngozi clenched her fist. "She cannot continue. Too many lives are gone. Let us face her." Together, they prayed, lifting their voices, asking for courage and protection. Their words rose like fire, uniting their broken spirits into one. By the time they finished, determination shone in their eyes. The following day, they marched together towards Sherwa's touch. It was afternoon, and the saloon bustled as usual. Customers sat chatting, assistants rushed about, and the mirrors glowed under the bright light. No one expected a storm to break that day. Amara pushed the door open, followed by Aisha, Janet, Ngozi, and several others. Their faces were stern, their steps firm. The chatter died instantly. Madam Sherwa stood in front of the room, her bangles jingling as she walked on a client. She raised her head and her smile faded when she saw the group. "What is this?" she asked coldly. Amara stepped forward. "We have come for the truth." Sharing their experiences one by one, the women spoke. Aisha's voice shook. "I sat in this chair, and days later my wedding ended in shame." Janet's eyes burned with anger. "I came here with joy, and within a week, I lost the job I worked for all my life." Ngozi held up her torn document. "I braided my hair here, and my scholarship vanished overnight. My dreams died here." Other women added their voices, recounting their sudden losses, businesses that collapsed, children who fell ill, opportunities that disappeared without reason. Each story pointed to the same source: Sherwa's touch. The assistants trembled. Customers sitting in chairs slowly rose and backed away, whispering in fear. Sherwa's face darkened. Her lips coiled into a mocking smile. "So, this is your plan? To gather like foolish hens and accuse me? You think your little stories will destroy me?" Amara lifted her Bible. "We did not come here in our own strength. We came to break the chains you have placed on these women. We came to free the voices you trapped." Immediately, the women began to pray, their voices rising together. They called on God, asking for light to scatter darkness, for fire to burn evil. The salon shook slightly, and the atmosphere changed. The mannequin heads lined on the shelves began to twitch, their braids writhed as though alive. Then, from the strands, lips appeared, dozens of them, all opening at once. A terrible sound filled the room, screaming, wailing, groaning voices of countless women. "Help us! Free us!" the voices cried. Customers screamed and ran out. The assistants fled to the street. Only Sherwa, Amara, and the group of praying women remained. Fury twisted Sherwa's face. She raised her hands and shouted in a voice that shook the walls. "Enough! You will not take what is mine. I earned this power, and no one will steal it from me." The black comb appeared in her hand as though summoned by invisible force. She lifted it high, chanting words in a language no one understood. The lights flickered violently. The mirrors cracked again, shards falling like rain. Flames sparked from the corners of the salon, though nothing had been lit. The air grew suffocating, heavy with smoke and whispers. The women continued praying louder, their voices against Sherwa's chant. The mannequin's head screamed. The walls groaned. The floor shook. The once beautiful salon now looked like a battlefield between heaven and hell. And the battle had only begun. "Let us pray louder," Amara cried, her voice carrying authority. The women surrounding her tightened their circle. Tears streamed down their cheeks, but their voices rose higher, clashing against Sherwa's chants. Their prayers filled the salon, shaking the walls with words of fire. The crowd outside had grown large. Men, women, and children gathered at the doors and windows, peering in fear. They could not enter, but they heard the screams and the strange cries echoing from within. Whispers spread quickly through the street. Something terrible is happening inside Sherwa's shop. Sherwa stood in the center, her hand raised, sweat pouring down her face. Her bangles jingled violently as power surged through her body. She screamed words in an ancient tongue, her eyes glowing red. But then, something unexpected began to happen. Her scarf slipped from her head, revealing her long black hair. At first, it whipped like a wild storm, moving without wind. Then, strands began to split. From each part, tiny lips appeared, mouths opening, screaming, mourning, laughing. The sound was unbearable. Hundreds of voices rose from her hair, each one crying like the souls she had drained. "No! Stop this!" Sherwa screamed. clawing at her head, but the mouth only multiplied. They stretched across every strand, pulling, biting, and cursing. Her cries mingled with tears, a terrifying chorus that shook everyone present. The women gasped, their prayers growing fiercer. Amara's voice rose above them all. You used their glory for your own gain. Now the same mouth will judge you. Sherwa staggered, clawing at her scalp. Her nails racked through her hair. But the mouth would not close. They beat at her fingers, screamed into her ears, and spat curses that pierced her skin like arrows. You fed on us. The voices roared. Now we'll feed on you. Her knees buckled. She fell onto the tiled floor, rolling, her body thrashing, her once proud face twisted in agony. The salon's lights exploded one after another, plunging the room into flickering firelight. Suddenly, the flames in the corners leaped higher. They spread across the walls, dancing like living creatures. The shelves caught fire, bottles of oil bursting and spilling liquid onto the ground. The heat grew unbearable. Smoke filled the room, choking everyone. The mannequin head burst into flames, their mouths still screaming as they melted. The women cried out, Jesus, save us! Amara pointed towards the door. Out! Everyone out! They ran, covering their faces, stumbling into the open street. The community rushed forward, pulling them to safety. Only Sherwa remained inside, written in the fire. Her hair still sprouting screaming mouths. A few brave men rushed in, covering their bodies with wet clothes. They grabbed Sherwa's arms and dragged her out into the street. She fought weakly, her hair whipping, the mouth still screaming. The fire roared behind them, swallowing the whole of the salon. The crowd gasped as Sherwa was thrown onto the dusty ground. Children cried, women covered their eyes, men stepped back in fear. No one had ever seen such horror. Sherwa rolled on the earth, her voice hoarse. Help me! Stop them! Stop the voices! But the mouth continued, louder than ever, mocking her, cursing her, condemning her. The salon behind her collapsed in a burst of flames. The sign, Sherwa's touch, falling in sparks. The empire she had built from stolen destinies was gone in moments. Sherwa did not die that night. The community carried her to a small hut outside the town, too afraid to keep her close. For days, she lay on a mat, screaming, pulling at her hair. The mouth never stopped. They tormented her with endless cries, reminding her of every soul she had drained. People who passed the hut heard the voices and quickened their steps, muttering prayers. None dared to go near. On the seventh day, silence finally fell. Her body lay still, her once beautiful face frozen in terror. The mouth had vanished, leaving behind only burnt strands of hair. Madame Sherwa was gone. News spread quickly. Sherwa is dead, and her saloon is no more. The community breathed with relief. Women who had suffered began to recover little by little. Some found new jobs, some reconciled with broken relationships, and others felt strength return to their spirits. The curse had lifted. One evening, the women who had stood with Amara gathered at the burnt ruins of the salon. The ashes were cold, the mirrors shattered, the chairs nothing but twisted metal. Yet in that silence, they felt peace. Amara stood before them, her face calm, her voice steady. She raised her Bible and spoke words that sank deep in everyone's heart. Beauty is nothing if it costs your soul. True beauty comes from within, not from stolen glory. Let us never forget this lesson. The women nodded, tears streaming down their cheeks. They held one another, grateful for freedom, grateful for truth, grateful for Amara's courage. And so, the story ended. Madame Sherwa's empire of stolen destinies was reduced to ashes, and the women of Ayetoro We are free at last. The most important lesson in this story is that no beauty, wealth, or success gained through evil or by stealing from others can last. Because every shortcut built on darkness will one day destroy its owner. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.